Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Hi, my name is Simon Phillips, and you are watching. Alright, let's try
Okay.
take two. Hi, I'm Simon Phillips, and you are watching.
Okay,
I'll
take
try
three.
listening first. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Take three. Ready? Hi, I'm Simon Phillips. You are listening and watching Linear Rock.
Hi Simon.
Hello.
I should say welcome to Bergamo, since we are in Bergamo,
We are in
Ranca.
Bergamo,
Okay,
yeah,
at
very
the
close
Druso.
to.
Yeah, very close to
Yeah.
Milan. And welcome to Linear Rock.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure for me to have you here and
Great.
having finally the chance to interview you.
Ah,
I have quite a bunch of questions. I hope we have time for them all.
okay.
Let's start from now.
Okay.
So Protocol 30th anniversary
Mm-hmm.
is a successful tour now in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
But originally, if I'm correct, Protocol was meant to be just a studio project with you playing all the instruments. But what happened next? How did it develop into a touring band?
Oh, natural progression.
Okay.
The only reason that Protocol, the original release of Protocol, which was Protocol 1, but
Yeah.
we didn't know, well, I didn't know it was going to be Protocol 1, was simply because I had made a load of demos, which were, some of them were on that album,
Yeah.
and I'd been taking it around record companies for a couple of years to get a record deal.
Okay.
This would have been 1986, 1987, 1988. And nobody was really interested in that kind of music. So in the end, I had a studio. I'd already built a studio. I was doing a lot of production at the time, a lot of engineering. I had some time, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to make it myself and put it out. And so I didn't really have a budget for it, but I had the studio. So I booked...
And the songs.
and well, I did, yeah. I mean, I did have the songs. And so I decided to record them as though it were a record. I had done all the instruments, playing, but mostly, I played into a sequencer. And then, and then I phoned an engineer friend of mine to come up and record the drums. And... because they were in a different room, and in those days, although I did actually have a machine that controlled the tape machine, but it's great to just have an engineer. You do it, and I'll concentrate on playing. And we did it in a week, and that was the thing, and I pressed it up and started selling it myself, and then a record company heard it and immediately wanted to license it.
Okay.
Go figure. So that was the beginning,
Yeah.
and then I'd always wanted to put a band together and play this stuff live. And it just slowly started happening. And then Force Majeure came along, and different lineups of the band came along, until finally in 2013, Protocol 2 was formed, and the record was made. And that to me was kind of like, now we're really starting on the Protocol project.
So now you have musicians, and you have a kind of rotating lineup with people coming and going.
Yeah.
Are you demanding with your musicians in this project, that have to play with you?
Extremely.
Extremely severe.
Yes.
Really?
The music is not easy. Not easy to play. And so in that respect, yes, I'm demanding. But I also pick musicians to come and bring their thing to the music.
Okay.
I tend to let the music go the way naturally that the players will tend to bring to the music. So, for example, Protocol 2 and Protocol 3 was Steve Weingart, Andy Timmons, and Ernest and myself. So that had a style right from the beginning and a sound. Then for Protocol 4, I changed the lineup and had Greg Howe come in on guitar, who's totally different from Andy, and Dennis Ham, who's totally different from Steve Weingart. So I was writing these songs and thinking, this is going to be interesting. And the first day of recording, it did take a little while to kind of see how this is going to work. But immediately it had its own sound. And Greg put his stamp on all those melodies, and he loved it. I mean, he said, this is very natural for me to play all this stuff. He felt very at home. So that became Protocol 4. Okay. You know? And then it's a funny thing, there's a pressure from promoters around, mainly in Europe, but a little bit in the States. They like to have a different band each time.
Okay.
Chick Corea has about 8 or 9 different bands, and he kind of swaps between them, you know. So I thought, well, okay, I'm a little bit more old-fashioned in the fact that I like to have a band that you nurture and the band progresses and matures, you know. But also I'm open to the fact of playing with new musicians. And when it came to doing a tour this year, I had a lot of changes happen in my life, and I'd met a couple of great young musicians, and I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to now bring back the horn to the band, because I always had horn. After Protocol 1, there was always a horn player. From 1990 all the way up to 2010, when I did various tours with different people. Always a 5-piece, because I love the energy of a 5-piece. So, yeah.
So you are an amazing musician, and you have amazing musicians playing with you. We all know what a protocol is, and of course I'm sure this is not a case that you chose that name because, you know, of the genre that you are proposing. But which is the protocol of protocol? Is there any?
The style of the music and the composition comes from the first compositions I wrote with Tony Hymas for Jeff Beck, There and Back. That's where it started from. My thoughts about jazz rock or fusion was there was a few people writing really great material, but after a while it just became like a head and then a load of blowing, and it was more jazz than rock. I wanted to be a little bit more rock than jazz. So it was truly the kind of like the music that we played with Jeff Beck, with There and Back. That's really what it was. The music that Jan Hammer composed for Jeff. It's a little more raunchy, a little more rock and roll. That's where the seed or the style of the music came from. Now, over the years, as I've matured and learnt a lot more about composition, some of them have gone a little bit more jazzy as well, especially harmonically. But I still think they have, it's basically a strong melody, and it has a strong rock element to it.
Do you consider yourself a drummer first, or a well-rounded, you know, musician and producer, or it's the combination of the three which makes you, you know, the real deal, a champion of the music, because you are in the Champions League of the drummers, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think of myself as a musician, yes. I think I've always been more interested in music than drumming, funnily enough. I started by playing songs. I didn't get technical until a lot later, funnily enough. I mean, I was always into Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson, always wanted to do all that stuff, but I enjoyed playing music. That was the thing and because of my musical path that I took, I started doing sessions very, very early on. So when you do sessions, it's not about technique. Well, it's a different type of technique. It's not about drum playing. It's about playing a song, and the best way to play that song, keeping time, and making the best out of what you've been given to, whether it's a chart or whether it's just a demo. So that's really my background. So I do think of myself more of a musician. When it comes to the production, the engineering, I was always into sound. My mum used to have tape machines. When I was very little, I would spool up the machine, hit play, and
right.
and you know. So that was always a fascination as well. So and I loved how do they get that sound, and that's what I love doing. So that was another thing that I got into, and then luckily was able to get a break to do it professionally when I was in 1983 with Mike Oldfield, and that was it. And then I started learning how to use all the equipment and how to get sounds, how to balance properly, learning about the technical aspects, how to align tape machines, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that is more of a passion, that side.
Is your approach to music any different, you know, working for yourself as a leader in your own project than, you know, for anybody else as a sideman?
No, I think it's exactly the same.
Same thing.
It's exactly the same. The difference is it's obviously when you work for someone else, then you know it's experience and you have to be respectful of the music and of course the people involved. But I give it exactly the same approach. Or rather, let's take it the other way. I approach my music in the same way that I would approach someone else.
Okay.
So when we're laying down a track, I will go into the control room after playing the track and we'll listen back, and I will police my part exactly the same way as if I were doing a session for someone else.
Okay.
But I've been doing that for years, so I'm used to being it's kind of it can be two people. I can be the player in the studio, and then when I walk through the door, that person that I'm listening to on playback is the drummer, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
And he could be standing in the room. I'm now the producer. So I've been able to do that. After, if you do it long enough, then you get used to doing it. It's the same as a director who acts in his own movie.
Right, okay.
I mean, it really is the same thing, you know. So you really have to know yourself pretty well and know your limitations and know when to say you're doing it wrong. Try something else, you know. Or don't be afraid to ask somebody, you know. I'm always very, very open with people, you know. Guys, you think the tempo of this is right? Or you think I should do something different here? And with certainly with Steve and Andy, because I guess I knew them better. You know, they wouldn't be afraid of saying something, you know, and very helpful too, which is great. You know, you can't do it all yourself.
You are a very technical drummer and musician, but you put a lot of art and soul in what you play. Do you think that the strict discipline can distort or change the nature of some kind of music? Maybe especially rock, you know, because it's supposed to be more instinctive and you don't have to think too much about it. What's your point of view on that?
It's not so much about thinking about it, but discipline is very important, because otherwise you'll play too much or you'll play the wrong thing, or stylistically you might play it. In other words, in order to break rules, you've got to learn them first. That's really what it's about. And I grew up in a very disciplinary apprenticeship playing with my father, incredibly strict. And his music was for dancing. Okay. And so old-fashioned, I mean, much, you know, it's like 1930s swing for dancing, really. But there's very strict rules with that. People have to dance to it. So you can't start playing bebop in the middle of a quick step, you know. And those lessons stood me in great stead for playing rock and roll, because it's kind of the same thing. It's just a more modern music and louder. But it is important to play with discipline and play tastefully, as well as being creative and innovative. But innovation comes, you either have it or you don't. But you've got to have that grounding, that discipline to be able to really, you know when to break those rules.
Okay. You know, I'm very impressed because you've always been one of the busiest musicians in the business, from rock to jazz, world music, everything. How can you find the time and energy to start, you know, your own thing, your solo project? What's the motivation behind this choice? And also, which is the biggest sacrifice to have, you know, a huge career like yours?
Well, the biggest sacrifice is your personal life. That's difficult.
Yeah.
Because I was brought up in a musical family. I was professional when I was 12 years old. I don't know anything else but surviving in the music business. And I've been told by certain partners, you're impossible, impossible to live with.
Okay. Because you're never there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that's and even when I'm there, sometimes I'm not there because
Okay.
I'm So, but I think a lot of people are like that. If you want to be good at something, you go to the nth degree to do it.
Yeah. And the energy, and time
Well,
to
the time
organize
is,
everything.
I mean that is difficult, and that was one thing. The problem with being with Toto is that we started working so much, and we started touring so much, and I never really. I love playing new music and creating in the studio. When you work in the studio, you're always playing new music. When you're on the road, you're playing old music.
Yeah.
We've been playing the same music for 6 weeks now, but this is why I've really tried hard to keep changing the set. Instead of learning 10 songs, we learned 15 songs.
Okay.
And I know that they do find it a little tricky, but every night I changed even just a couple of songs around, just to keep it fresh.
Fresh, yeah.
I don't want to play one tune too many times. I want to let's take that out and put this one in. So.
Do you improvise sometimes? Do you jam actually, or you go straight?
We don't usually jam outside of the structure of the song, but a lot of the songs have plenty of areas where it's improvisation.
Okay.
And it's down to your imagination to try to expand that. So yeah, I mean, within limits, there is a jamming element, but it's structured within the composition. Yeah.
You're very much appreciated for the variety of your style. Do you think that being a freelance musician and playing a lot of different stuff helped, in a sense, you to develop the creativity and the variety in your approach? And is it something that you would suggest to any musician to try different genres and play different things? Or in the end there's no other feeling like being part of a band and doing finding your own genre and keep it
Right.
up? And
Now, the interesting thing, that comes down to being the difference between a drummer and a musician who plays a tuned instrument.
okay.
As drummers, we can, but we don't have to learn anything about chords, scales, key signatures, counterpoint. We actually don't need to do that. We can go very successfully just going, whatever it is, right? So the one thing I think a drummer should do, and this is what I did, is to learn many different styles of drumming, or learn to play many styles of music. We don't have to sit there and go, learn what a C major scale is, what a C minor is, what an augmented 13th, all this stuff. It's not relevant to our instrument, but we do have to have ears to be able to play. This is like because when a producer's explaining something, and you're playing like a rock song, and you're in a rock band, let's say, and the producer goes, let's try this a bit differently. Let's think of this more as an Irish jig. Now that might sound, what's that got to do with rock and roll? Look at The Who.
Yeah.
Look at Cream, Sunshine of Your Love. What happened with Sunshine of Your Love was Tom Dowd, they tried to play that song and record it for days, and it was not working. And Tom Dowd had this amazing idea. He said, Ginger, think of it as a Native American Indian rhythm, right?
Almost tribal stuff, yeah.
There you go. There was Sunshine of Your Love.
Yeah.
Cream's a rock band,
Yeah.
right? But it's not a standard rock rhythm.
Right.
So that's my point. And if you don't have any knowledge of other types of music, you're going to be very limited, and all your songs are going to sound the same. So, which is, there's plenty of successful bands out there doing it. We're not talking about success here in terms of financial. We are talking about success in a musical point of view. So I do think drummers should learn at least to play many types of music. I think the more musical they can be, the better gift they will have.
Looking at yourself from the outside, you know, kind of analyzing Simon Phillips, what do you think is the most distinctive aspect of your style?
Curly head?
Apart from that?
Sound.
Okay.
My sound. The one thing that I was fascinated with was the sound of a tom-tom. And I spent a long time trying to make my tom-toms be heard. Now, when I started recording, we didn't use tom-tom mics. We just had mono. When I started recording, one mic over the drum kit, one on the kick drum.
Okay.
That's what the BBC engineers would do. And then they started adding a snare drum mic. Then when I started doing record dates, which would end up on LPs, then we'd have two mics, and usually one there, one there. That was a standard thing. 4 mics for a drum kit. So the problem was to get those tom-toms to really come through, because nobody really had that. They were kind of pretty dead sounds, you know. I love the sound of the jazz toms, you know, which are pitched up. So when I started doing sessions, I started playing around with the tuning, and it was really funny. Some engineers absolutely loved it, and then they started, of course, in the mid-70s, started putting mics on all the toms. And some engineers absolutely love the tom-tom sound. And then other engineers would say, oh, it's too ringy, it's too live, and all this.
Yeah.
You know. But I just fought and got my own sound. So I think that's probably, in terms of my playing, the most distinctive thing is my sound. I have a very distinctive sound.
As I was mentioning before about, you know, there's no other feeling in the world like being part of a band.
Right.
About Toto, which has always been, you know, a big family. Going back in time, you know, with all those guys that were growing together and feeling a family, was it any difficult for you to become a member of that family, you know, after, you know, in a second time? It was 1992 when you joined them.
I joined in 92, yes,
so,
right after Jeff Porcaro passed away. Yes,
so,
yeah.
Was it difficult for you, like, to enter, you know, such a family?
The two sides of that. The first thing was the music. And my job was to learn a whole set of songs in 3 weeks and rehearse in 3 weeks. I had no chance, apart from listening on the plane on the way over, because I was already busy right up until I had to leave England to go to rehearse.
Did you already know the songs? I mean, did you
never
listen
to
I
knew Africa, I knew Rosanna, but to play them is very different. But I didn't really know much about their other music, you know. So I was on the plane with a pair of headphones and a DAT machine and charts. I made up charts for all these songs, you know. We rehearsed for 3 weeks, and we started playing shows, and you know, from that point of view, it was, I mean, nothing is easy. It's always hard to play something well. Yeah. I'm never going to say it wasn't hard, but that's what I do, and that's what I've been used to doing. So that wasn't the difficult part. The difficult part was, unlike a lot of bands, Toto, the members of Toto have grown up together. They were at school together. Yeah. Most bands meet when they're 17, 18, 19. Everybody knew each other when they were kids. Yeah. They were Valley kids.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. That is tough.
That's a difficult one.
Yeah.
And not only that, I don't come from the Valley. I do come from a valley. It's called the Thames Valley, London. That was, it was interesting, you know, especially when the novelty wears off. So first of all, everybody gets on the plane to go to, actually London was our first show. Our first show was Manchester. And that was in fact, I actually flew back a couple of days before because I still had, you know, contacts in England. I still had stuff I needed to do. That flight over for them was one of the saddest things. I mean, they were in tears because it was the first time they'd ever flown to go to start a tour without Jeff. So that was rough, but they were wonderful. Mike especially, I mean, he lost his brother, but he was always so positive about me being in the band.
Oh, great.
And after 2 weeks, Mike turned to me. I remember this distinctively. I think we were in Hamburg, and we were staying in a lovely hotel right by the Altersee there. And we got the car back from the gig, and we were walking up the steps into the lobby, and he said, "So you want to join the band, like full time?" And I said, "Is the band thinking of continuing?" He said, "Well, I want it to." Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So, and then a few weeks later, Luke was like, "Yeah, come on, we can do this. This is, you know." So, you know, that was like, I didn't expect that at all. I just assumed I was there to do that tour, and then everybody would just take some time off and think about what they wanted to do. But no, they were like, "Let's keep going." And that was when I officially joined the band, the beginning of '93. And it was interesting, the fans, I didn't expect, or rather I didn't think about their close fans and what a close-knit family of fans that they have. And we'd arrive at these gigs and there's all these people waiting, and I'm like, oh boy, this is interesting, you know? And they're thinking, and most of them didn't know who I was, because they weren't really, they were Toto fans. They weren't Jagger fans or The Who, or, you know, Jeff Beck fans or Jack Bruce or Stanley Clarke. You know, they had no idea who those people really were, you know, maybe apart from Jagger. But they soon learned. You know, they saw me playing and they thought, wow, you know, it's different, but it's Toto, you know. So, yeah, you know, there were times when it was tricky just because we had such different upbringings, but they were also very open to it too. You can't turn the clock back. Can't bring Jeff back.
Sure.
The band is working. We're making records. Great. And 21 years.
You know, it's fresh news. You know, Steve just announced that the band is calling it quit.
It's just finished.
They're breaking up. Yeah. What's your feeling, you know, about it, since you've been a huge part of it for so many years?
A huge part of it, and also I left in 2013.
Yeah.
You know. I think it's fine. Okay. There's too many, I mean, this is a tough one. There's too many bands that are out there still doing it, and I think they shouldn't be doing it.
Okay.
You know. However, there does come a financial aspect because people still have to earn a living.
Yeah.
And the thing is about musicians is, because of the styles of our life, some can afford to retire, but being a musician isn't a retiring kind of life. Unless you're Bill Bruford, unless you're Artie Shaw, and if you Steve Perry, and even he, I'm not sure if he's really retired. It's a hard thing to retire from, being a musician. It's a lifetime commitment. So that's a tough one. I do think, though, that's the reason I left, because to me it was long enough.
Okay.
Long enough. I needed to now, the latter part of my life, I want to do different things.
Okay.
So maybe they will feel the same about that.
Okay. And let's go to the funny question.
Okay.
What do you remember of your metal days with Judas Priest? That was 1977, the Scene After Scene album you recorded. Which is your main, memory about it, and how was, to play heavy metal right over?
It was great. Well, at that time we didn't call it heavy metal.
Okay.
And I was actually doing a lot of heavy rock.
Okay.
That's what they were. A lot of heavy rock records. That's how I came to do the Judas Priest record, because I'd been playing with Roger Glover's album, and he produced Judas Priest.
Sure.
Bernie Marsden, David Coverdale, and various other people making heavy rock albums. I remember very clearly when we started rehearsing the songs. There were no demos.
Yeah.
Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guitar player. He just said,
Glenn.
it goes like this. Like this. Okay, so we all start playing, and then it stopped. Then the next bit goes like this. That's how it was.
Okay.
And we recorded at Rampart Studios, which was Pete Townshend's studio.
Yeah.
And it was just Glenn on guitar there, my drum kit here, Ian, the bass player here, and Rob in the vocal booth. And KK didn't play. He was in the control room with Roger.
Oh.
They always just did it as a trio and vocals.
Oh.
Yeah, KK did his parts after it. That's often that actually happens. It's just easier to sort things out that way, you know.
And was it easier for you to play, heavy rock in
I was
that
playing it
moment?
all the time.
It was like
it wasn't anything new for me. I've been playing it anyway.
Okay.
So I just played it the way I
what
played
a
it.
great song Sinner is.
Yeah,
wow.
isn't it?
Yeah. It is amazing.
Yeah. And then of course there's Michael Schenker.
Yeah.
Yeah, who I'm actually going to be playing with next year in Japan. So.
You've done a lot of records. Have you ever count them, or how many records you played on?
I think I did once many years ago, but the problem is, a lot of things are re-released, they're repackaged, so you never really know, It would be more accurate to say how many sessions I've done in terms of they're the original recordings, and whatever gets used from those recordings, whether multiple times or not, or just shelved,
But if you have to pick 3 records that, really you expressed yourself at your best, which ones would you pick? 3 is right.
That's hard. Well, I think There and Back, Jeff Beck.
Okay.
I think that's a very important record. And I'm going to pick more the early records. Jack Bruce, House Tricks, that might have been one. 801 Live.
Okay.
That was a really interesting record. We did it live, but it was a wonderful band. Boy, there's a lot of records in there to choose from,
Yeah.
Pete Townsend, maybe White City.
Mm-hmm.
I think more in terms of the tracks, maybe like one track. One particular track I'm very proud of is Give Blood, which was on White City.
Sure.
There's a lot. It's really always hard, because then I'll go and go, oh, I forgot that one,
Okay, since you mentioned The Who, The Who and Toto, Keith Moon and Jeff Porcaro, 2 of the most influential drummers in rock, but very different from each other. Crazy attitude, versus the elegance, the absolute elegance. Which one you feel closer to your style, and spirit also, and which were, the toughest shoes to fill? Keith or Jeff?
Pretty much the same.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's very different.
Very different, but in terms of the process of learning the songs and playing, no, it was exactly the same process. In terms of do I feel, I actually would say I'm probably right in the middle.
Okay.
Because there's certain stuff I do which is more, could be, or let's say the approach is more like Jeff. I mean, it doesn't sound like him, but in terms of the approach and the styles of music that I have to cover. Keith wouldn't be playing on a fusion album, right? He wouldn't be playing on an R&B album, right? But I'm a little bit more like Keith in terms of being a little bit, as Pete Townsend used to say, a bit more of an anarchist. There's a bit more anarchy in my playing. I can go real left field at any time, where I don't think, Jeff was always very much, he always played the right thing for the record.
Yeah.
And I could say it like this. Jeff always sounded older than he was. Keith always sounded younger than he was.
Yep.
All right?
Yeah.
And so I think I'm kind of in the middle there, because I do like that. I'm a jazz player. So I do like to push the limits, and I like to do stuff out of the blue, which people are not expecting. So I'd say a good mixture.
If you have to pick one Who song and one Toto song that you really enjoyed to play live, and that were, in a sense your cup of tea, but also really enjoyed.
Well, the Who, that would be easy, and that would be Who Are You?
Okay.
It was always my favorite tune when it came out, and I love playing it.
All right. Toto?
Toto's a little more difficult because I composed a lot of the music as well in the later you know, from Tambu onwards, really. So it's a little bit different when you're playing your own songs, you know. I would say one of my favorites that I wasn't connected with in terms of writing was Hydra.
Okay.
In fact, that was the first song we ever played together, because they basically said, right, what do you want to do?
Oh.
And Hydra was on the list, and I said, well, let's do Hydra. And they all went, wow, okay, we haven't played that in ages. And of course, it's the only one in 7, so
it's in the list.
Yeah,
so.
It's in the list, so we did it, and that's how we played it all the way through. And yeah, it worked great. In terms of the ones that I produced or co-wrote, oh boy, there's actually many. Bottom of Your Soul, I think, was a really lovely song. One of my favourite songs.
Yeah, that was.
And that drum track was it was actually very cool, because David Page came up with a basic thing, right? Luke added a few things, but they kind of left it to me to kind of commandeer. Kind of, let's say, and I walked in, I'll never forget it, walked into the studio and I said, let me have this, I got this one. And so I did the whole beginning with I got everybody in, I made up a track, just in Pro Tools with a tempo and everything. I started with a djembe, played a djembe, looped it. I got all the band to come in, gave them all percussion instruments, we crowded around the mic, I said, this is what we're going to do. Pling, you know, like that. We all shook everything, right? And then I got Paige and Mike Porcaro to hit the top of the organ, and I put a couple of mics on it, just hands, on the flat piece of wood. That's the very beginning, right? Right? And it was great because Paige and Luke said, go for it.
Yeah.
Take this, go on, take it, Si. You got this one. And that was really a good bit of trust. And then when it came to doing the drum track, which is after we put chords down, I think Luke had put a guitar down, I said, right, let me do some drums. Well, I think they said, can you do some drums now? Or something like that. And I did. One take.
Oh, wow.
It was a one take thing. I think one punch, I remember one punch in it. But the basic track was one.
Done.
Because I was so in tune with the track, I'd arranged it, and so, you know, it plays itself, really. So that was one of my favourite songs.
You started to play very young, but you see, that's last one, okay.
Yeah.
But you succeeded and made a living, you know, through this passion. Today we see hundreds of kids, you know, playing like consummate musicians, and they're very young. On YouTube you see like 4-year-old drummers doing a lot of complicated stuff. From your experience, you know, having been a prodigy from an early age, is it something healthy for a kid, or even if, you know, you made a living out of it, or in the end it some way, you know, stole your childhood, you know, dedicating so much to an instrument since the early days?
That's what I wanted to do.
Okay, so it wasn't painful at all for you?
No. I mean, you know, I lost out on a few things at school. I remember a ski trip that I couldn't go to because I was on the road.
Yeah.
And there was a school ski, and I would have loved to have gone there at 13 or 14 and learned to ski. But, you know, hey, these are things that you have to give up in order to do something very seriously. And if you're starting young, then that's it. Yeah. But there were no regrets.
No regrets at all?
No,
oh, okay.
no regrets, no. It just makes your life, you know, sometimes a little difficult with, you know, in terms of personal stuff and, you know, family life. You just have a different way of dealing with it, I guess.
Very last thing. Is there, you know, you've done a lot of things, and you are one of the most known drummers and well-respected drummers in the world. Is there a goal you still have, something you still damn want, you know, to accomplish at this point? Yeah, Grammy.
I want a Grammy. I got a nomination. I want a Grammy. You know, the funny thing is that when I was mixing Protocol 4, I was just really enjoying it and going, and I really did think, this feels like a really good album. And I said to myself, I want a Grammy for this. And so I did the whole thing of putting it in, and I never even thought, I thought it would just get lost. When I woke up that morning with my phone and go, In fact, where is my phone? I think it's on stage. I got messages. Congratulations, you've been nominated. I went, you've got to be kidding me, really? You know, and I lost out to Steve Gadd, and you can't complain about that. You know.
Yeah, of course.
So,
we were talking about the Champions League of drummers.
Yes, yeah. So you know, my goal is just to compose better music, you know, and make. I hope, you know, that the next album I make will be as good and hopefully received as well as Protocol 4. Okay. You know, you can't always hit the goalposts every time. That's why you have one record that's great, then the follow-up one people don't like, and you know, it's very hard to do that. But I just hope I can keep improving as a player, keep improving as a musician and a composer and sound engineer, and health.
Thanks, Simon. It's
Okay,
been such a
you.
pleasure and honor.